Erik Ten Hag's Reds have suffered back-to-back defeats in the Premier League following Sunday's 3-1 defeat to Manchester City. We'll be digesting events at the Etihad, the frustrations of Marcus Rashford, a tantalising FA Cup quarter-final tie with Liverpool, and of course, your questions. It's all coming up on the latest episode of the Strettycast. Following an undefeated start to 2024, Erik Ten Hag's side enjoyed a variety of victories across the Premier League and the FA Cup, setting the tone for a top four charge in the final stage of the season. Now today as I speak to you, following back-to-back Premier League defeats against Fulham and Manchester City, separated by a dramatic 1-0 FA Cup victory at the City Ground, United sits 6th, 11 points behind Aston Villa, who are in 4th place and currently hold a negative goal difference by way of 2, with 11 fixtures to fight for an unlikely top 4 finish. Sunday's defeat has left an unsavoury taste in the mouth of many would-be supporters, and we have fresh calls for the head of our Dutch tactician. Now, in a game that saw Marcus Rashford open the scoring with a genuine wonder strike, I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that. A brace from Phil Foden and a third from Erling Haaland ensured that we left with nothing, despite a more than admirable structured performance that left many thinking that the 3-1 scoreline did not accurately do Ten Hag's side justice. Now, one of those vocal men happens to be sitting alongside me right now. Brian Murphy, let's get this off your chest. Unleash, my man. What did we think about the tactical structure and the setup in that 3-1 defeat to City?
I'm a mix of feelings after this game because I'm baffled I'm baffled at the reaction of people to the game tactically and setup and game plan wise. I don't really understand what people expected from it. When you take into the context of the personnel we have available, the injuries, the back four we're going to see with no striker recognised, I can't understand what people wanted. Did they want us to go toe-to-toe and mix it up with City, who are, look, I hate saying arguably the best team in the world, but like they're just after winning the treble. It's literally a game where Ten Hag got it right, and there's no denying it. He got it perfectly right. I thought the first 45 minutes of that game was backs to the wall, defensive and quick counter-attack, which is the only possible way that we could have taken on Man City away from home with who we had available. And I thought we did it really, really well. I thought the first half was an admirable performance. It was a clever, mature decision to set the team up the way he did. And I thought we handled it very well. And I could take pelters for saying it, but we could have had that game almost dead and buried by half-time. Granted, Rashford scored a wonder goal. He had another opportunity he fluffed going through on goal 1-on-1, and then he swung it air for the third opportunity. He could arguably have had a hat-trick in the first half against Man City away from home, which would have definitely been justification for him or after his comments during the week or his video or whatever you want to call it. Unfortunately, he didn't take the chances. He took the first one. He took the hardest of them, actually, funnily enough, and stuck it. But in a game like this, that's what you have to do. If you want to come out victorious or you want to get a result, you have to take your chances when they come up. We didn't. It's a long time to hold out against a Man City side who are going to pummel you and come at you again and again and again. And unfortunately, they did. Phil Foden stuck his own wonder strike, and then things went downhill from there. But on another day, and this might be being biased or blind optimism or whatever you want to call it, on another day, that game is a completely different outcome. And people's response, I assume, if we manage to stick those couple of chances away and we come away from there with an unlikely win, Ten Hag is a genius. It's an unbelievable performance. It's been brilliant. Class, we're brilliant. But nobody expected, I don't think anybody expected us to win that game going into it. The general expectation was we're going to get battered. Then how can you come out if you think we're going to get battered before the game and we don't have the players and we're missing these and that, this one and that one? Well, how can you then come out after the game and say, oh, Ten Hag has to go after that, and that was ridiculous, and we're shit and whatever else? What the fuck did you expect? Before the game, you said we're going to get battered because we haven't got the players available and we're going to the game and City are going to kill us. Then they beat us 3-1. I thought we'll say the first half was very good and we lose. And then you're still giving Ten Hag a fucking battering when you yourself never expected us to get anything out of the game. I mean, come on, like, have a bit of common sense would be so much welcome in the fan base at times. It just fucking annoys me.
It's almost like there's an agenda, wouldn't you say? If you want to go toe to toe with this side, you're going to be obliterated. And let's face it, something that we've often spoken about. Manchester United are in a certain position now, and despite where we want to be, we have to actually look at where we are. And that Manchester City side have taken Champions League teams to the sword and put 3, 4, 5 goals past them. I think it was a structurally sound performance set up in the best possible way to get the most out of that game. But Dale, you were rather put out by the knee-jerk reactions across the board, following a largely tactically sound affair against what Brian said is the best side in the world, as much as I hate to say that. What more could have been expected on the day?
Well, I was going to start by saying I thought we did as well as we could have expected. As Brian kind of alluded to, we were depleted defence against the best team in the world. You take out some of the best defenders, Diaz, Ake, Walker and co. Take out Haaland because we were missing Highland. It'd be different. Difference with City is they could throw in Alvarez without Haaland. But, we were completely depleted, playing the best team in the world. I don't really know what people were expecting. This kind of thing that I seen one person complain that Ten Hag's game management was awful or poor, his substitutions. If you look at the bench before the game, what options does he have? No centre forward to come on and mix it. We didn't even start with a centre forward. We don't have one at the moment. So, I don't really know what people expected. I thought to get through that first hour like we did, I thought was pretty good. When you play that type of football, when you're soaking pressure against a team that are so good against the low block, it's a bit of a lottery if you can get through it, because City are so good at cutting teams apart. Now, that was my question at half time. We got over the hurdle of not conceding for the first 45 minutes, plus a bonus of going in a goal ahead. But the question was, could we sustain this for 90 minutes? And we didn't have the depth in the squad to sustain it because we took out Jonny Evans out of defence, who played really well. And all of a sudden, our defence fell asunder. And they put Foden over the other side and just caused complete havoc. Casemiro, another player that's, he's gone past his best. He hasn't got the legs he had last season, not the same influence. And I thought he did really well for the first maybe hour or 70 minutes, but he couldn't sustain his performance against that City midfield. You're doing lots of running. So it was just too much to ask of them in the end. We shouldn't be surprised by that because we're miles off City. But I think the reason why I wouldn't be going too hard in on the players either is you could see they had a plan. And a lot of games this season, that wasn't the case. So didn't go to plan, but yeah, not the worst for me.
City knew the team we were going to be playing were obviously so limited in personnel. It wasn't very difficult for Pep to go, that's the team they're going to start. That's all they have available. And it was notably visible that they targeted Lindelof at left back. They went after that side time and time again. We weren't the most difficult side to play against, given the fact that we had no surprise up our sleeve. And as you said, when you look at the bench, not to disrespect the lads on the bench, but we didn't exactly have a raft of strong options to come off. And again, it brings us back to what we've discussed many times during the season. It just shows the lack of depth. And I said it the last day on the podcast, when you take into account the drop-off in quality from the first team starting player to who potentially comes in to replace him, the drop-off is huge. For a lot of the times, it's massive. Especially when you look at our defence. I mean, we're missing so many defenders. We're starting, is Jonny Evans 36-ish now? 35, 36 against Erling fucking Haaland. I mean, Erik Ten Hag, I doubt, would choose, no disrespect to Jonny Evans, I don't think he'd choose to pick Evans to go up against Haaland. And like Evans did himself, no worries, as he's done all season, to be fair, when he's played. He represented himself very well. But again, it just highlights that we literally are struggling so much for depth. it's killing us. It is killing us. Like, I know we keep going on about injuries, but they're fucking murdering us all season. I feel, at times, I just feel sorry for Ten Hag with what he has to play with when he comes to the game the weekend and he's looking going, Jesus Christ, I wish I had give it a centre back or a striker or whatever. He must be just demoralised going, is this fucking injury crisis ever going to end and give me a chance to actually play a bit of football and go out there and go at teams again? But it's not an excuse for getting battered by City. They did batter us as such on the field, possession wise and stats wise. But again, I don't think, I said it directly after the game on Twitter, I don't think the 3-1 was a fair representation of the game. And I might be biased and rose tinted glasses and the rest of it, but we take our chances that we created. And that's like, it's a perfect example of counter-attacking football for any team that's going up against a team that they know the other team is superior. They know the other team is going to fucking carve you open if you let them have a chance. You sit back, defend backs to the wall, and hope you can create a couple of chances. And we did. It's not Erik Ten Hag's fault. We couldn't put them couple of chances away. That's all I'm going to say on that.
It addresses so many fundamental conversations that are happening every single day about this football club. One of the largest things that people like to discuss on a regular basis is the manager's tactical nous and what he is and is not doing. If you take that fixture and compare it directly with the FA Cup final, we looked at the FA Cup final, the game was over in the first 60 seconds. You know, you could have walked out after the start we had. This was a far more regimented performance that was tactically sound. Structurally, was the correct way to set up against a side that we couldn't line up man for man. And it was a tactically shrewd performance that we got a fantastic goal in a way that was set up very, very well. And I mean, like, with the very best of respect, Bruno Fernandes deserves a lot of credit for that particular goal. He came forward, he confused City's defenders in what he was doing. His hold-up play was fantastic. And furthermore, Marcus Rashford puts his laces through it. But when you're going to sit back and you're going to soak up so much pressure, it's what I said directly after the game, it's what I said during the game. If you have 11 men behind the ball, you have to be clinical when you have the ball. And unfortunately, we were not clinical in the handful of opportunities that we got. It was kind of ironic as well, lads, because the goal we got came from very, very little. Whereas the opportunities you'd be looking at that these sort of sides took over previous years against City, they were the ones that really went askew. And if you are going to get something out of it, and particularly when you're 1-0 up, if you manage to nail one of those and you go 2-0 up, the game's totally different. The dynamic is totally different. And that sort of defensive structure that you're looking at becomes even more to the fore, because not only are you defending one goal, you're defending a 2-goal lead. And for me, that was the huge difference on the day, Brian.
I'll put a question to the two of you because it's just something I was thinking about there for a second. If you could pick one of the players that we were missing, out of all the players we're missing currently, if you could pick one player that would have made a big difference on Sunday, why is it Rasmus Højlund?
Oh, I could go on and on and on about how glorious that fella is and what he would have given us in that game in terms of being able to hold up, in terms of being able to use physicality against City's defenders. People need to realise that it's not just Rasmus Højlund, it's the profile of Rasmus Højlund. It's that type of footballer. It's what Haller did at Ajax for Ten Hag. He brings all of the different channels into the game with his hold-up play. Now, sometimes because of his youth, I think he can maybe be a little bit too adventurous with regards to his hold-up play, and he almost puts himself out of control because he's backing into the defenders so much. But his hold-up play, his link-up play for the wingers, his ability to be able to bring Bruno into it and the marauding centre midfielders forward, it's so lacking. Obviously, cutting with the fact that he is so clinical as well, because the goals he's got them from absolutely nothing. But while I will take what you're saying about Højlund, I mean, if Lisandro Martinez is in that team as well, it's such a different outlook.
Oh, massively. I think on Højlund, when you play the way we did, you need someone up there, a focal point that's going to hold up the ball. You know, lets the players come further forward, and that's what Ten Hag wants. You see, there was one stage of the game where you're actually starting to see Onana really come up high up the pitch, where I was wondering at the start of the season, was he ever going to do that? And you can see he's kind of gaining confidence through good performances. But if you have someone like Højlund holding the ball up, it brings more the players higher up the pitch. He would have been massive. But on Martinez, absolutely massive on that, because you look at the game and the amount of fouls in it for a derby. I don't think there was even a handful between the both sides. And when we're 1-0 up, you know, and see, you're kind of threatening us a bit. Why don't we leave a bit in on him? Do you know what I mean? Because are we a little bit nice? Someone said this to me yesterday. Are United too nice? And I think we're a bit more inclined to be nice in recent years. But looking at that derby yesterday, maybe we are.
There were so little fouls, and this is kind of slightly humorous, but also slightly true, because we spent a lot of the game inside in our own box, and if there was fouls, it would have been a fucking penalty. Like, we were getting battered. We didn't get out enough to get into midfield and mix it up a bit. That's just kind of giving it a nuanced take on it. But the whole reason I was mentioning Hyland, you both said it about the hold-up play. Imagine the break he would have given our defence from getting pummeled by getting the ball and just literally taking it into himself. Even if it's only a couple of seconds, letting someone come up and we get to keep possession for a while. And obviously someone running off him can probably break through the field. But it's just, we didn't have that. We didn't have the breather. We didn't have the little break for the defence. When we got it out and we finally got it cleared and we tried to break out, it was mostly Garnacho and Rashford trying to run onto balls quickly or trying to drop a ball out wide or over the top, where we just didn't have that. We didn't have Hyland to just literally take the ball in and let the defence have a fucking break for a minute. And as Shaun said, obviously his clinical finishing would have been fucking supreme, but that's what I thought we missed so badly. I know what you're saying about Martinez, but the only reason I picked Hyland over Martinez for this is because I think we didn't defend too badly, to be fair, against what was thrown at us. And like Evans and Varane are two big lads, good blocks, big tall fellas, balls coming into the box, hitting them out the whole time, flying around the place. I just think Hyland would have offered us that out that we missed so badly.
There is someone that we need to speak about because he doesn't get enough talking points. He doesn't get enough plaudits. He doesn't get enough conversation, and that's Andre Onana. I think we can all agree that that was probably his finest performance in a Manchester United shirt. Some of the saves he pulled off were fantastic. His positioning was very good. His distribution was very, very good. And I know we can be critical of him. And I think a lot of people have really forgotten that there is a transitional period. And particularly with goalkeepers, when you're coming from a new league, from another country, into the melting pot that is Manchester United. Does he deserve to be getting more credit?
100%. But I think also we should also sit back a bit on the hype, because what we're seeing right now is a player that is just playing with more confidence. In the past few weeks since the African Cup of Nations, he hasn't done enough to change the masses' view of him in terms of that he's now convinced everyone that he's our number one for the foreseeable future. The jury's still out for a lot of people. But I think what we can say is that he's shown glimpses now of the goalkeeper that we thought we signed. The confident goalkeeper that's off his line in the right time, in the right places, protecting his defence. Came out off his line at the weekend in the opening minutes and made an important save one-on-one. The kind of one-on-one that he would have conceded being chipped in the Champions League earlier on in the season. But look, there's signs of improvement. I never thought that he wasn't a top goalkeeper, even when he was making mistakes, because we've seen top goalkeepers at United come and struggle at the start. De Gea was no different. De Gea got backed. I think if you see glimpses of something, and you mentioned this is a team in transition, we signed Onana to change our style of play, to start playing out from the back. And we can now see in the last few weeks that that key trait can be so important, or even our build-up play. Look at the goal we scored the weekend. We're all talking about the brilliant build-up play from Bruno Fernandes. But Onana was wide onto the mark of, being quick enough to spot that pass, play it long, stun City's defence. With more time, we'll start seeing more of that. And I think another important thing is that defence has changed about over 30 times this season. New goalkeeper coming in, an unsettled back four week in, week out. That's very, very difficult. What we're seeing now is him playing with more confidence, and we should be happy about that. But he's not over the hurdle of having everyone convinced just yet, I don't think.
Dale speaks about confidence, Brian. He speaks about a player that is trying to find his confidence, and his natural ability is coming to the fore when he starts gaining some of that confidence. Now, this isn't trying to put you in the spot or anything, but I know you don't have massive confidence, or you didn't have massive confidence in the player. Is he starting to get to you in any way, shape or form that maybe he does have a little bit of ability and he is cut out for this level?
I'm always willing to give credit where it's deserved. And look, hands up, he's not my favourite player. I haven't rated him so far. I've been fairly harsh on him a few times. Definitely seen improvement in him. I was very, very, very impressed with him on Sunday for large parts of that game. His passing was very good. His vision was good. As Dale has suggested, it looked like a fella with a bit more confidence, a bit more pep in his step. I thought he had a good game. I saw a stat during the week. I know someone would be low the figure, but like he's faced something like fucking 400 and something shots over the last while or this season or whatever it is. Like he's like a fella in the firing squad in World War II, for fuck's sake, on the front line. He's just bullets flying past him the whole time. I suppose I'm a great man for saying people need to understand context, and I probably need to understand a bit of context myself when it comes to Onana, that he is getting peppered with shots. And the law of averages are you're not going to save every shot. Fair enough. He hasn't been great overall since he came in. He's been pretty bad at times. He's definitely shown signs of improvement lately, but I think he's got an awful, awful long way to go to convince me that he is definitely the 100% right choice to come in, because I'm thinking of United goalkeepers of old, and like I know it's modern football and times change and all that, but the standard is still similar. Like you're still basing off the same level of, is he a top class goalkeeper? Does he bring stability to the team, and does he offer that role at the back? When you're looking through Van der Sars, De Gea's, Schmeichel's, when you look at our top keepers over the years, he's miles away from proving that to me yet. And the thing, this is no slight on Dale. A lot of people make this comparison of when De Gea came in, he made blunders and he had to be trusted. De Gea came in as a kid. That's the big difference. De Gea was a young lad when he joined. Like he was very young in goalkeeper terms when he joined United first. Onana isn't a kid. He's got a good enough solid career behind him. He's at an age where you probably shouldn't be coming in making that many mistakes, to be fair. He probably should be coming in with a bit more a bit more regularity in his solid performances. But obviously it's a fair comparison saying new keeper coming into new style, new league and all that, but just the age profile is slightly different than that. I can't say that he's convinced me by any means yet that he's going to be the person that I want to see in goals for us going forward. But there's definitely signs that he's getting better, yeah.
I think that coming in with a bit more experience than De Gea, you expect a bit more, but if you're looking for consistency, just look back at that point about the lack of consistency in team selections across the fence. I think that's so big. If you even look at De Gea when he came in, he had a solid back four in front of him. It wasn't chopping and changing every week. So you could look at the pros and cons of when Bo came to the club. One was so young. You could say Onana's a bit older. You could argue, but he's come from a different league and it takes time to get used to the Premier League. Like I read a stat this morning. Now I don't have it off the top of my head, but there was something that Onana, I have it here now, sorry. Onana's high ball claims yesterday meant he surpassed De Gea's high ball claims for the past 2 seasons combined. So he made 8 high ball claims against City, which is more than what De Gea managed in his previous 2 seasons. So you can look at so many of the pros and cons to it. He still has a lot to do to convince us all that he's number one. But I think he didn't really have that much experience coming into the Premier League. I've been a Premier League goalkeeper. And that's very different to being a goalkeeper in Italy and in Spain. The comparison you could look at is when he went to Inter initially, he wasn't considered a starter for the first half of the season and was kind of pushed out of the team and there was question marks about him and it took him time to settle. Second half of the season, he was the best goalkeeper in the Champions League.
The way you're saying there, and you're suggesting that not having a solid back four is, and it is a fair point, of course, for a keeper. That's crucial. It's also, I suppose, a kind of a viewpoint you could transfer to a lot of players in the team, or even the manager. Like if you suggest Rasmus Højlund come into the team at the start of the season, he didn't have a settled midfield to work with. He didn't have wingers that were consistent. Again, he didn't have the likes of Martinez and Shaw busting out from the back. Go back to the midfield itself. Mason Mount didn't get a chance to put his stamp on the team. Casemiro was missing. You're missing players left, right, and centre. It's been a theme of the season, and people do need. I know as much as we all absolutely, utterly want to see United playing great football and winning football matches week in, week out. If you sit back and just take a deep breath for a second, and just try and be pragmatic in your thinking, I suppose is the way I want to put it. this is rotted through the team all season. This same type of a problem where you haven't had stability in any of the lines, defence, midfield, attack. Even Hyland was out injured when he came first, and he's out injured again. You know, it's entirely changed the dynamic of the side because Martial is fucking making daisy chains somewhere, so we've no other striker to come in. Like, it must be very, very difficult for Ten Hag to try and implement any type or semblance of a style that he wants to play, for the keeper to have a settled back four in front of him, for the back four to get used to playing with each other. You always want to have partnerships, centre-back partnerships. The midfield to get used to playing with each other. Again, you're bringing in a young lad in Kobbie Mainoo, a child come into the side, different dynamic again. Like, it's probably been the story of our season. We just can't seem to get that settled side. Whereas you look at like the City, granted the Scousers have a bit of an injury thing going on at the moment, but like City almost know their starting 11. By and large, they know their starting 11 or their strongest starting 11, and they almost always have it available. They're able to get used to each other, and that comes with any great football team or any strong football team who's won titles and won trophies. The knowledge of each other's game is key to that success. Like the fact that Gary Neville knew exactly what David Beckham was going to do in front of him, or he knew what Vidic or Ferdinand or whoever beside him, he knew where Roy Keane was going to be. He knew Scholes was going to drop into that pocket. They knew exactly, almost to the level of not needing to look where the player was before they made the pass. It was just telepathic. We don't have 5% of that in the side this season. We simply can't have that because we don't have the players playing together long enough to build that and to gel that form together. So, you know, it's very easy to just throw the axe into fellas and into the manager and into the team at times, but sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture and just accept the fact that we just can't get the fucking strongest 11 out or the same 11 out with any bit of consistency.
Fernandes with Diaz close to him. He set it for Rashford! He has ripped it in! Marcus Rashford with force! That is Manchester United lightning!
If you back me, good. If you doubt me, even better. Confident words from a man and the closing lines of a heartfelt article released by Mr. Marcus Rashford on Thursday of last week, which was intended as an open book, aiming to highlight who he really is during this difficult period. Now, backing that up with his goal was one way to respond, although there was probably a little more to grasp from his outing on Sunday. That's not in any way, shape or form saying he's to blame, but there just wasn't a whole pile else to grasp onto. Now, I think for me, when I think about Marcus Rashford, I've spent so much time trying to analyse his ups and his downs in his form over the last 5-6 years. People call it purple patches. People call it his overall general desire to be a top-tier footballer. But when we look at this player, we see a guy that prior to going on the field and going up against any teammate, he looks fantastic. He's got all the flair. He does all the dribbles, does his keepy uppies, make sure that the camera sees it. And that's fine for a player that has all of the talent in the world to be able to do so. But when we see this guy on the football field, I think we are looking at a fella who endures this particular up and down in his form based on his overall footballing IQ. I don't think it's down to ability. I think it's his footballing IQ. We see time and time again when Marcus Rashford gets the ball in the field, he just runs and he aims to beat a defender with his speed. And more often than not, he runs into a brick wall. I think so much of it comes down to his confidence. When he's flying high in his confidence, he believes in himself that he has the ability to be able to run past players. But we're not looking at a confident footballer. And when he's not confident, I genuinely feel that his low footballing IQ transcends into poor performances, poor decisions, and the amount of frustration that we see. And I think it culminated against City the last day. You saw 2 or 3 moments where if we have a confident Marcus Rashford, he's beaten the City defence, as he did previously. He's ended Man City careers, we'll famously remember. But with Kyle Walker behind him, he genuinely did not believe he was going to beat Kyle Walker in a battle. And we saw poor decision making. Obviously, for the first goal, he went down at a clamour, which many people have largely attributed the fact that it wasn't a foul. But at this moment in time, what is your take on Marcus Rashford? Was he right to release this article? Was he right to attack his doubters based on the premise that he has been hardly done by? Because for me, as someone who has supported him, was he really hardly done by this season? Or should he really just cock his chest out and say, I've not been good enough?
That article or video or whatever he released during the week, I thought it was poor decision making by either him or his PR team or whoever decided to put it out or timed it to put it out now. It's it just struck me as a small little bit tone deaf to what's going on the pitch. So I never mind the player backing themselves. By all means, they should. I do mind the chest puffed out, doubt me, great, whatever way he put it. That's fine, Marcus. If your demeanour on the pitch and your performances and your effort levels back what you're trying to say, but they don't. I mean, what we've been seeing from Marcus Rashford, and I'll preface this by saying, I backed on this podcast at the start of the season, I backed him to the nth degree. I literally backed him to the fucking core. And I know what he's capable of. And it annoys me because I watched a video clip of him yesterday or the day before. It was a throwback to goals he's scored and performances and all the things he's done. Marcus Rashford is a devastating player in top form, in top fitness, in top confidence. Devastating. Absolutely devastating. But the Marcus Rashford we're seeing this season, it's a shadow of himself. So I don't see how he can have the confidence in his article to put it out and start going on about people doubting him and whatnot. I tweeted it this morning. Marcus Rashford, in Sunday, showed us a glimpse of what Marcus Rashford is capable of, but backed it up with the exact reason why people have been doubting him. It was some of the stuff that he showed on the pitch Sunday it was so far below the level we expected of him, and it was so far below what we needed. I just don't understand why he felt the tone of that article needed to be kind of a, if you think I'm not good enough, fuck you kind of a thing, basically. We know you're good enough, Marcus. We've seen it. Every one of us believe you're good enough. But we want you to show it. We want to see you, even if you're not in form scoring goals. I want to watch Marcus Rashford on a Saturday playing against another team, coming off the pitch with dirty shorts and his boots white from hitting the touchline and sweat rolling down his forehead from busting his bollocks for 90 minutes. Fucking Barkley, the fat cunt, walked past him the other day and he just literally strolled around. I mean, I know people go, oh, you're picking out moments and it's very harsh to pick out a single moment. It's not. It was fucking horrific. I mean, Marcus Rashford, he goes on about the sacrifices he made to come and to play for United, and he went to another club for 2 games and he decided, no, I want to play only for Man United and this is what I've always wanted to do all my life. Marcus, you are playing for Man United. You are getting paid a small fortune. I think he's probably our most paid player. I might be wrong. Doesn't really matter. You're there. You have the opportunity to do it. Jesus Christ, man. Just put in a shift. Even if you don't get the goal or the assist, at least come off the pitch with your head held high saying, well, look, it didn't work out today, but I gave everything I have. We're not seeing that. We're just not seeing the effort. We're not seeing the desire, and we're not seeing the demeanour, which is the biggest thing, the body language, the facial expressions, the attitude. We're not seeing that from him. I don't like going hammer and tongs into a player constantly, but Rashford, I think the reason that most of us, if we're honest, the reason most of us are pissed off at Marcus Rashford is because we know how good he is. We know what he can offer the team. And I think deep down, we all just want to see him being the Marcus Rashford who puts the finger to his head with his celebration that went fucking viral all over the world. We just want to see that Marcus Rashford, the smile on his face, banging in goals, top corner from off, coming in off the left-hand side and enjoying playing football. It's not what we're seeing now. So I think the core reason that everyone is so pissed off, it's the core reason I'm fucking so annoyed by him, is I know what he can do. I know he's better than this. I know he can bring more to the team. And to be honest with you, we need him right now. I mean, last season he saved our whole a lot of the time, but we need him right now. We need him to stand up, and we need him to be counted, and we need him to give us that outlet and that delivery of goals out of nowhere and the little devastating runs where he beats the defender and sticks it. We're not seeing that, and I don't know why I think the article was just badly advised or ill-advised. And I think it was bad timing. I think he should have released that article if he went on a run of a couple of games where he scored a couple of goals. Then release it. But when you're not doing that, I thought the timing was poor.
This is a guy who has scored 129 goals, added 74 assists. That's 203 goal contributions in 392 appearances. Is this a guy that wants out of the club, Dale?
I don't think he wants out of the club. I think he's unhappy at the club, but I don't think he's actively pushing. I think looking back at this interview, it looked like he wanted to sit down and get a few things off his chest. He was unhappy with the media that he says have always written 90% lies about him. And he spoke about how his commitment to Manchester United has been questioned. There was a big elephant in the room when I was reading that he did not touch on. And that was the reports of a bit of a rift with Ten Hag, or that he's not happy with Ten Hag. And the article didn't touch on that. So if Marcus Rashford really wanted to sit down and tackle a few untruths, I think he left a big one out there. A lot of the things with Rashford down the years have been PR driven. It's hard to really trust that, and that comes out of that camp at the moment. And I think if he really wants to silence his critics and get people off his back, just let your performance do the talking. You know, at the weekend, the way the derby started, and that days after that interview came out, like, this is going perfect for Rashford. You know, this is like, is he kind of really coming back with a bang here, dropping that interview, scoring a goal like that? Look, the rest of the performance wasn't great. And those people that believe that Rashford is like a purple patch kind of performer, they'd look back at that performance and they'd say, there's another example of it. But I think, look, Rashford doesn't look happy to me. Something needs to be sorted. But I think if he really wanted to tackle some untruths in that interview, he left a big elephant in the room by not touching on his relationship with Ten Hag. He did not even mention it once.
You know, something that I always think about with Rashford, Dale, he's always had this sort of petulant outlook on the field. You can see it in him, like he flails his arms, he looks visibly frustrated. How much of that do you think comes down to him being frustrated with himself? Because the Marcus Rashford that everybody expects, I'm tying this now into the whole thing I'm talking about, a footballing IQ. How much do you think he gets frustrated with himself, gets irritated with himself because he's actually unable to complete what he's trying to do on the football field? Because I see it time and time again. You might see him trying to beat a man or to try a little trick. It doesn't pay off. It doesn't work. And I noticed then in the 60 seconds or so that comes after that, he's flailing around the place. He's less interested in busting a gut to get back. And he just looks like an agitated figure. Do you reckon there's anything in that?
Well, he's 26. Yeah, I'd expect a bit more from an experienced player. That sounds like a kid that's coming through, that's 21, 20, that you need to work on a bit. You know, he's 26 now. I think that's the biggest take that I will take from this interview and this little media stunt. Rashford needs to grow up. He's not an academy kid anymore. He's not one of the young ones in the dressing room. He's actually, as a matter of fact, he's the one Kobbie Mainoo, Garnacho, Hyland should be looking up to. And right now, he's not taking responsibility for his performances. It's the second time this season as well that he's hit out at fans. Almost, I would say, with his celebration when he scored that goal, trying to make a point that, look, I'm kind of back. He did fuck all after that for a while. He's done this interview now. And, you know, these little outbursts, Keane said it at the time. Just let your performance do the talking. No one will talk. No one will complain then. And let's see, Rashford last season scored 30 goals, and I think everyone was talking about him, and he was enjoying being the star of the moment. And performances this season have been poor, and he's not getting that love. But I think maybe you're touching on something there with his mentality. Maybe that's an issue. You know, looking at these interviews and these media stunts, the big thing for me is grow up. You're a professional footballer. You're going to get slack. Especially when you play shit and you play for Man United and you're one of the highest paid players. That comes with it. And if he's not able for it, well then that decision needs to be made in the summer.
It's funny as part of what you just said, Dale. After you mentioned Roy Keane, you went on to actually almost sound like Roy Keane. the little every comment became more high pitched at the end of it. It was quite it was quite lovely. He just became he became the Tipperary version of Roy Keane all of a sudden. Let the performances do your pitch. Brilliant, brilliant. Come here on a different note, just to throw a curveball in there, right?
Go on.
And I'm not making excuses for Marcus Rashford. I haven't all along. But does it look like a fella, and I'm going to relate it to another player on the side who got the help when he needed it? Is it a fella whose mental health is at him? I'm not using the mental health card as a cop out. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, is there a potential that something isn't quite right behind the scenes? Is something not right in Marcus Rashford's life? Is he going through something off the pitch that no one knows about? Look, go back to the human level. And I did the same thing with Harry Maguire. I always brought it back to the human level with Harry Maguire. I always thought when he was getting pelters, it must be difficult. And he wanted to play for the club and he couldn't, and all the rest of that. Let's say Marcus Rashford, hypothetically, is going through something and there's something not quite right in the background and he's struggling mentally and he's not dealing with it very well. I'd have no problem, and I don't think either of you would, doing the very same thing or something similar that Ten Hag did for Jadon Sancho back then, and let him take a little break from football if he needs to get out of the limelight for it all of a sudden. And if he needs a month off, or he needs 6 weeks off just to go away and get his head straight, or needs a bit of help to deal with his issues, afford him that. Let him have that, and let him come back the player that he can be. I'm just putting it out there, not giving him a fucking get out of jail free card. But I'd have no issues with it. I'd hope that if he did come back after that, he wouldn't react the same way Sancho did. But it's just food for thought.
I was just going to say, after how it resulted the last time, I'd say Ten Hag won't be going down that route with any of these players again.
That's a fair point.
I can't see him. I can't see Marcus Rashford ending up with Borussia Dortmund with Sancho, to be fair, but you'd never know.
Touching on what you said and answering it as pragmatically as I can, I'd be all for that. Of course I would. You have to look at those things, especially with his age, as short-term pain for a long-term gain, don't you? And if there is something that is eating him in the background, a couple of months away to get his head right will only benefit us in moving forward, particularly with the arrival of Sir Jim Radcliffe and what we're trying to achieve, Del.
Should we send them back to Belfast?
Yeah, it seemed to work. It worked pretty good when he came back, didn't it?
Belfast for 2 or 3 months, says he'd be thrilled with that.
We've spoken about this now. We all kind of agree about the same thing. And we've looked at the form, we've looked at back-to-back defeats in the Premier League. But as I alluded to previously, they were split with that very, very late 1-0 victory at the City Ground in the FA Cup. And now Sunday the 17th of March, we'll see Liverpool making a trip to Old Trafford for a quarter-final FA Cup tie. It opens the door for an opportunity for Rashford to answer Morty's critics, as well as the manager to continue his trend of collecting silverware. There's so many ideals in this, particularly with the winner that we had at the City Ground, paying back to Ferguson during those potentially difficult days, Dale. But then as well, you're looking in the more recent time, and you got Louis van Gaal winning an FA Cup and then saying goodbye a couple hours later. What do you make about the tie as a whole? These are the games we want to see, aren't they? We want to see United playing Liverpool. We want to be playing the best teams. I've never been one for this whole idea of let's get Coventry and let's get an easy passage through. I'd sooner beat the best teams en route to the final. Would you be along with that?
Well, especially, I think I would. I know we're having a dire season, but with being out of the European competitions and slipping away from the top 4 race, you want to have fixtures to look forward to, especially with these players. I know we've had the derby and that, but that game against Liverpool, that, gives players something to look forward to, something to fight for, something to work hard towards. And we need games like that to keep these players interested. If we have fuck all to play for come the end of the season, you just don't know what you're going to get. But yeah, look, I'm excited for this, playing Liverpool. It's always a big one. And I think they've got a few injuries right now. I don't know who will be back before that game comes around in 2 weeks. But we should have Hyland back. Fingers crossed, Lisandro Martinez will be closer to match fitness. We've got Mason Mount and Co to return as well. So hopefully we have a few of those players back for that game, and Liverpool still have injury problems. But look, big cup game. I think looking at between now and the end of the season, that's probably the best we can hope for. The top 4 seems a bit of a stretch, but running the cup, of course, is manageable.
Well, I think it'd be fantastic as well to give Jurgen Klopp a nice present in kicking him out of the FA Cup at that stage, particularly at Old Trafford. But when you look at Liverpool's running as well, I know we have our own issues, but you've just alluded to the injury crisis that Liverpool are going through. And sort of between here and that tie in the 17th of March, they have a home and away tie in the Europa League. And they also have that really, really crucial game against Man City coming up in a week's time as well at Anfield. Brian, are you looking forward to the quarter-final tie with Liverpool? Were you happy when you saw the draw come out?
Yes and no. As much as playing Liverpool is, it's always one of those fixtures that's obviously exciting. It's the big fixture against Liverpool. I fucking hate it. I absolutely hate it. I hate playing Liverpool home, away, cup, Europe. Anytime we play them, I dread it because you win, brilliant. You lose, it's a fucking nightmare. It's absolutely sickening. Um, I kind of passed a funny joke, a funny comment to one of the boys the other day. The Forest game, I was like, I'd almost prefer to get knocked out of the cup by Forest than Liverpool, which take it whatever way you want, but them knocking us out of the cup, it's more bragging rights. It's them lauding us over it again. It'll be the media fucking singing off Klopp's hymn sheet. Oh, Klopp's swan song knocks United out of the FA Cup. I just can't deal with that shit. I can't deal with the whole fucking pity party love story for Klopp at the moment. But again, I said it on Twitter. I said it'd be just like United to be so shit all season, and all of a sudden you end up knocking Liverpool out of the cup, and you end up beating them in the league, and you fuck their chances to win the title. That'd be typical us. So it's a fixture. Obviously, you want to be playing these fixtures, and you want to be playing against teams like Liverpool, but it's just Liverpool specifically. I don't enjoy ever playing against them. I'd never enjoy it in the ground. I never enjoyed it watching it on telly. I feel sick to my stomach coming up against them because I know that if the game doesn't go well, I'm going to listen to it and we're going to get absolutely battered over it. So there's always that little side story in that. But do you know, like they have this fucking injury crisis which could play into our hands. And if we're honest about it, Chelsea absolutely bottled it against them. They absolutely threw that tie away. And funnily, as I just said about the media narratives and the Klopp loving, next thing we started hearing about Klopp's kids won it and these little social media graphics with Van Dijk and all these young players and the Alan Hansen quotes were getting brought up and this big narrative about Liverpool's kids got over the line. It was such a massive win. Forgetting the fact that Chelsea's starting 11 and finishing 11 happened to be younger than them, which is just total and utter proof that there genuinely is a narrative being pushed from all angles about this Klopp's last season and the loving that it has created. It makes me physically sick to my stomach to watch it. But I swear to God, as I'm sitting here talking to you, if we knock them out of the FA Cup, I will enjoy every last millisecond of it. It would be a really fantastic way to make a shit season that little bit better.
At this stage of the podcast, I'm sure you're aware that the world and his uncle are launching an attack on Erik Ten Hag. But the boys at the Steadycast remain front and centre in bringing you your weekly dose of Dutch delights. Now you've made it this far, and I'm sure you're feeling all warm inside. So take that last step and hit the bloody subscribe button. We're nothing without you, and your week is a hell of a lot less interesting without us. So, let's make it official. Subscribe to the Steadycast now. Oh, how we could do with a bit of Keno right now. And on that, I think it's about time to dive into some of our listener questions, and an extremely relevant one based on everything we've spoken about to start proceedings. It has come in from Cantona Collars, aka Larry, the one and only, on Twitter. And Larry asks, can we aspire to be anything more than a transitional counter-attacking team, with both Rashford and Bruno being in it? Will this suit the style of play that Radcliffe said he wants to be implemented?
Well, hello, Larry. Good listener to the show and top lad on Twitter, in fairness. Always
For
good
sure.
interacting. So, yeah, like on Sunday, we saw the counter-attacking side, of course, because we came up against Man City. But I think by and large, if we can get back, and I hate harping on about injuries the whole time, but if we can get back to a fully fit squad, if Ten Hag has everyone he wants at his disposal, I don't think we have to be a counter-attacking side by any means. I think we can be a completely different side. But we can't see that at the moment because obviously we're struggling for personnel, we're struggling for cover, we're struggling for options. But I don't see us long-term playing that kind of football if he gets a chance to bring everyone back into things. Obviously, it's fresh on our minds after seeing that kind of football against City the weekend. But look, call a spade a spade. We're not coming up against teams like City every week, so I wouldn't expect us to need to be that kind of that pragmatic. No, I honestly think we can play a far different style of football, but it's pending. Let's say hypothetically Ten Hag gets to stay long term, and this transfer window changes things around a bit, and personnel come in, and he gets to get what he wants. I think he can forge a totally different style of football, and I think that's what he planned. And Shaun, you really nailed that at the start of the year. I think he can really get to put his side playing the style of football that he wants to. I mean, like, as we went in at the start of the season, I actually had to get you to explain it to me about how he was going to play these inverted fullbacks and this kind of style of football. I think that's what he's aiming for, but he's been hamstrung so much this season. He just has not had a chance to get anywhere near that. I mean, Mason Mount would have been involved in that a lot. A lot of the players were missing all season would have been involved in that kind of football, that style of football. They haven't been available. He's had to just basically play what he has with what he has. So, to answer your question, Larry, I don't see that being our long-term style now.
I want to add in on this now because I think something you've touched upon is perfectly relevant to all of this. So much focus goes on who we can blame when things are going bad. You made reference to having a fully fit side available, and it's not harping on constantly about injuries when injuries is the core issue that he's having. It's a little over a year ago, and we go to 2 games. On the 16th of February, we went to the new camp, and we drew 2-2 with Barcelona. On the 23rd of February, they came to Old Trafford, we beat them 2-1. This was a Barcelona side that were running away with La Liga. We were given 2 hopes, slim and none. And Manchester United, with a more or less fully fit side, went to the new camp and played Barcelona off the field and were incredibly unlucky not to take the win away. And then they came back to Old Trafford. United played them off the field again and beat them 2-1. That was a tie that we were largely expected to be eliminated from. And Ten Hag took Barcelona on in a manner that we didn't see against City, in going toe-to-toe with them. But he went toe-to-toe with Barcelona and he beat them over a 2-legged tie. And very few people give him an opportunity to do so. And he showed what he can do when he has a fully fit team to pick from. So, for me, this is why I have been so adamant about keeping the manager at the club. Because, as we said time and time again, he is going every week with a hand tied behind his back. And that was one of the few opportunities that he's had where he's had a fully fit Arsenal to pick from. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, but we know that with key players in this side that will get better performances. We've seen that for a few weeks when Lisandro Martinez came back into the team, and we knew his importance and what he'd bring to our attack. Now he's out of the team. We're all hearing these complaints about performances, about the lack of style of play. And we know why. We're missing key ingredients to how we want to play. It's not going to pick up without those key ingredients added back into the team. You're talking about the performance against Barcelona. That in ways is kind of starting to kind of sound like Ollie's night out against PSG. You know, it's the one that people are looking back on. And the difference is, I think Ten Hag is such a good coach. He's the next level up than Ollie, I believe, that we can get that kind of football on the regular if he's let to build his team. Now, I don't care what people can harp on about. Oh, he's had his chance in the market with buying this player, hasn't worked out, and this player hasn't worked out. I think if you properly analyse his signings, they're not as bad as what people make out. I think people go on the extreme, and that's going to make one example. No, Anthony's been absolutely horrific this season, but I don't think he was just as bad as what people are saying as when he last season. I think he was all right last season for his debut campaign. He wasn't awful. He's been awful this year. He's still a young player, But look at Highlands. It looks like he's going to develop into an elite striker. Haven't seen Mason Mount yet, so it's too early to judge on him. Martinez, he's an elite defender. So the signings aren't as bad as what people make it out to be. But I think what he really needs is a proper recruitment team behind him, and someone that knows how to identify these targets and work with him on getting the right players in. Because the football you're all talking about, the Barcelona game, I reckon we can get that on the regular. Really do. Maybe it's 2 years down the line, but with Ten Hag, I think we can get there with the right backing.
Next question we have comes in from Gerard Kennedy, and he asks us, I think we'd all agree since Ineos have come in, they've made positive changes to the structure of the club. I just would like to know, in your opinion, if Ineos was to decide on changing manager before some of these deadwood are moved on, would that move be seen as positive? Shaun, what do you reckon?
No, I don't think it would be seen as positive. I think that there is a number of players whose time is well and truly done at Manchester United, and I wouldn't go as far as calling all of them deadwood, but there's a number of players that don't fit the criteria and what we need in moving forward. And as I've said, week in, week out, the manager is the manager that I want at the club. I want him to be given a proper opportunity, at least for 12 months of some semblance of structure. And obviously I have no control over what happens, but if the new hierarchy comes in and they opt to sell X, Y, and Z in terms of playing staff while getting rid of the manager, I know it fits this criteria that new owners generally come in and they want their own man, but I can't help but feel that if you're sitting down and you're trying to build a platform for Manchester United in moving forward, and it has to sustain a certain style of football that we want to play, which is a progressive brand of attacking football. If you're sort of laying down the criteria, bullet point after bullet point after bullet point, Ten Hag meets all of that criteria. He wants to play possession-based, on-the-ground football, working between transitions and working in pyramids and cycles between players. That is forward-pressing and forward-thinking football. He can't do it with the limitations that he has. So you can get rid of Ten Hag, you can bring in another manager. They're going to have the same issues, and I might just be totally set on tunnel vision toward this point of view. But for me, I think he needs to stay. I think we need to clear out many, many players, but I don't think the manager needs to go.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of that, Shaun. And I also think the way the question is worded about getting rid of the manager or changing manager before we move on some of the dead wood, and would that be positive? I think it'd be really negative, because something we've said for months on this podcast before we've got to the point of really talking about Erik Ten Hag walking a tightrope is player power, and how that's been the case under previous managers of players not being happy and players outliving several managers. And that's a big issue. I think that's part of the issues we have with the culture of the dressing room, is that these players seem to think that they're like cats with 9 lives, 9 managers that they can flip through when they're unhappy. And I only really want players at Manchester United, and I mean this because it's pissed me off for a few years under several managers. So I only want players at United that are willing to take responsibility, that can point the finger at themselves and they're not good enough. And I think any player that's unwilling to do that, that's what we need to be shipping out, and get in players with the right character. We have the right character in manager. Fully convinced of that.
We also have to take into account, he hasn't had that many transfer windows to achieve. What did Ragnick say? Open heart surgery was what required at the club. Open heart surgery can't be achieved over 2 to 3 windows. It takes time. It takes time to learn who needs to be kept around, who you can trust, who you can build a team around. Granted, some of his transfers haven't worked out. Not every manager is going to get it right. And unfortunately at United, they're usually high profile, high money transfers, which is the kick in the bollocks. But he hasn't had that many chances to shape the squad. And then you take into account the structure changes. This is very new. This Ineos Sir Jim thing hasn't happened that long ago. It's only ratified a week ago. And they're all about the structure change and best in class coming in to do this, and this guy is going to be brought in to do that. But let Ten Hag experience that. Let Ten Hag work under a structure. Ten Hag's worked under shite since he came in, pretty much. Give him a chance under this structure. Give him a chance to prove what he can do with the right guys behind him, helping him. Do you know, like, give him a chance to prove what he can do with another couple of transfer windows, shape his squad, get the right lads helping him in the background with the right structure around the club. And like, why is it always get rid of the manager, bring someone else in? Oh, bring in this guy because there's a new structure and he'll work well under it. Why the fuck can't Ten Hag have a chance to work under a fucking structure rather than being hamstrung by dickheads behind him all the time making idiotic decisions or causing issues at the club? Do you know, it annoys me.
I think as well as that, and something you kind of touched on, there hasn't been enough time to really give, I believe, a verdict on his signings. You know, as Shaun or as Brian touched on in terms of how many transfer windows, hasn't really been enough, I think, to cast a fair verdict on how he's done in the market. But we have another question in from Keane O'Sullivan. Now, he gives a list of wingers and he wants the two of you or three of us to pick two of these to keep in the summer. The list includes Anthony, Greenwood, Sancho, Ahmad, and Pellistri. Now, we know Greenwood's in there. We don't know what's happening in that regard, but I want you two to pick two of those wingers to keep.
Pellistri and Ahmad. That's who I'd be keeping out of those. I mean, Greenwood, I never want to see him in Manchester ever again. Sancho, I just don't see it working at the club. So then you come down to Anthony, Ahmad, and Pellistri. And while I do agree with what you said previously, that Anthony's debut season was nowhere near as poor as what it's made out to be. And people forget that he broke the record for the amount of consecutive goals scored by a new signing at the club as well. I know he's incredibly limited. And I know that he's probably playing at a level right now that's beyond him. I would entrust youth and I would let it roll on Ahmad and Pellistri.
Rule Greenwood out straight away because he's a dickhead. Sancho, dickhead. Give us pick 2 out of 3. Like, I haven't seen a whole pile from Pellistri or from Ahmad just yet to kind of give us any major excitement around the two of them. And Anthony winds me up every time I see him play. But the only thing about Anthony is he costs so much, you probably have to take into account you're going to have to give him a chance to come good. So, right, keep Anthony. I could choose between Ahmad and Pellistri. I just don't know because I haven't seen enough of either of the two of them. And like, coin toss, to be honest. I don't want to keep Anthony. I'd sell Anthony tomorrow if I had a choice because I don't rate him. I don't think he's going to ever make it. But I think realistically speaking, he's not going to be sold in the summer because you're not going to get anywhere close to what we paid for him. So I'd probably want to keep Ahmad and Pellistri, but I think we'll keep Ahmad and Anthony and one of the two.
What you're saying about Anthony, though, I do understand that the financial side of it is perfectly acceptable. But there's also the side that if he stays there and continues to drop underwhelming performances, that his valuation continues to depreciate. And that is a real worry as well.
That's the risk you take. And that's where these guys that they're appointing, so Jim Radcliffe bringing in the best of class, that's what they're going to be paid for, is to make this decision. You know, if they can see the traits that he has to make it, they'll keep him. And if don't, they get rid of him. We'll see then in the coming years what kind of player he becomes. But if I was to pick two, with that list of players, I am going to keep Anthony because I think, you know, we've seen little bits of Pellistri. He had a few opportunities this season. It didn't pull up trees. I don't think he's ever going to make it at United. I don't think we've seen enough of Ahmad. He hasn't been given really any opportunities to really perform. But he scored 14 goals in the Championship last season. He definitely has something. So he'd be the one I keep with Anthony. I don't want to keep Anthony, but out of that list, I have to keep two.
It's a risk keeping Anthony, and if his form continues to struggle, his valuation goes to the toilet. Let's be realistic. What's his valuation right now? Because there's no club looking at Anthony this season thinking, geez, I'd love to have him in the right wing. He's fucking class. Do you know, he's not... You'd want to be off your head to be paying big money for Anthony right now. Not to mind if he has another stinker of a season. So I think we have to just literally hope to God this fella comes good.
You're saying what clubs would be looking at him. I think Ajax would take him back in a heartbeat. And Ajax would do so in a heartbeat, knowing what he is capable of doing for that club in that league. And they'd also be licking their lips at the prospect and knowing that, well, we're not going to have to pay anywhere near what we received for him. But the longer that you wait and the more that he continues to struggle in this melting pot, then they're just, it's reversing off Sterling every single week that goes by. And I mean, I was basing this on the question that what two players would I keep? It wasn't sort of looking at it from the overall perspective of a football club with the finances and all that. Naturally, with a financial perspective, you're looking at Anthony and trying to recoup as much as you possibly can. But I just feel, from everything I've seen, and I'm ever the optimist, I will always back people. I think he's looking at this standard, and I don't think he's able to keep up with it. That's just me.
I think as well, to be honest, he looks like a player to me. It's crazy we spend so much money on him. But he looks like a player to me that's come out of the academy into the first team. You can see he's got glimpses of something. He's talented, but that he would benefit massively from going out on loan. Now, the problem with this is when you spend over 80 million on a player, you're not going to be sending him on loan to Bologna or whatever. That would make sense. That would probably be a good move to help his development. But yeah, I'd agree. He's doesn't look like he's at the required level.
I like that touch on Bologna because there's something magic going on there. Completely off what we're talking about, but Thiago Motta is doing an amazing job there. Finally, staying on the managerial topic with this last question, Neil Crode has dropped in on Facebook and he asks, well, actually he states, I understand that you guys still support the manager, but if Ineos made a change, who would you want? Now, I'm going to respond very, very quickly to this, Neil, and it's not disrespectful. But Erik Ten Hag has managed 100 games at this club. And while the amount of losses this season is unacceptable, the man has won 61% of the fixtures that he's played. He's delivered 2 finals, winning one of them. This is the manager that I want to lead Sir Jim Ratcliffe's vision.
100% with you.
I don't see if I've looked at these lists of potential managers and the odds and whatever else. If anyone wants to replace him, that's fine. You can have that opinion. There's nothing out there. It's not like we're looking going, geez, I'd love that fella at the club. He's a class manager. There's very, very little to get excited about. But for me personally, as I've spoken about all night, I want Erik Ten Hag. I genuinely believe Erik Ten Hag can achieve very good things at this club if he's given the time to afford it to him under this new, fantastic, amazing dreamland structure that he's going to be working under, that Ineos are bringing in. Back the manager, support the team, defend the club. Simple as that.
It is very much as simple as that. Now, gentlemen, I must say it was great to be back with you this week. As always, a pleasure. And for everyone listening, thank you. We're going to be back next week and hopefully we're speaking about a win against Everton. I've been Shaun Connolly. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so on Twitter, or as Dale is going to refer to, X at SeanConnolly85. Brian, how can they say hello?
Find me as always talking utter nonsense at DayTrippingRed on Twitter. If you don't subscribe to this podcast, I'm going to find you and I'm going to shave your cat, but only his head, so he looks like a weirdo.
I absolutely love those every week.
So he looks like you, Brian.
He's, remember, bald is best.
Dale, last but not least, how can I get you?
Follow me on X at O'Donnelldale. Make sure you follow on Stretty News and Stretty Cast, and you'll get all our stuff there. Thanks for listening.